we teach from the Bible, inspiration, and good scientific research. I believe our Creator intended for us to be in good health, and that's not so we can have an easy life. That's not so we can do whatever we want. I think God wants us to use that health to serve Him. We have precious truths to share with you that, when adhered to, they save lives. I believe that these things are the truths of God, and if you choose to apply them, you will find that they can change your life. God has a plan through which He can accomplish this in all of us. No matter what's going on, God has a plan to help you to have better health. And God's plan is available to everyone because God is an equal opportunity God. So, if there's something that's not available to everybody, then I don't really think that is a crucial part of God's plan. And God's plan is different than man's plan. You'll hear me say that the world says do this, but I believe God is telling us to do this. So, I told you we have precious truths. Well, what exactly is truth? Let's read it together, shall we? Truth is not what I believe. Truth is fact. I may not believe it. I may not know it. That does not change it. It is there nevertheless, waiting to be discovered and believed. Truth does not depend upon the unsettled and changing opinions of men. It was truth before it was believed. It will remain truth whether it is believed or not. Carlisle B. Haynes. So, I believe we're telling you God's truths, and you have the choice to believe them or not. I really encourage you to believe them, though. They're from God. Again, our definition of disease. Disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. So if there are health laws we can violate, we need to know what they are in order to not violate them. So our topic is heart disease, okay? Heart disease is the leading cause of death in the United States. In the year 2020, heart disease caused almost 700,000 deaths. That is almost one death every 34 seconds. That's essentially almost 2 every minute. The annual price tag is over $229 billion. Heart disease used to affect more men than women, but now in our world we want equality for men and women, so we have equality with heart disease as well. Almost as many women are getting heart disease as men. Not the kind of equality you want. In the United States, someone has a heart attack almost every 40 seconds. That doesn't mean that everybody who has a heart attack dies, but there's a heart attack almost every 40 seconds. What kind of symptoms do you get if you get a heart attack? Well, chest pain is the #1 symptom. Or it may just be discomfort, pressure. You can also get upper body pain, pain in your arms, left side more so than the right, pain going up into your neck or your jaw. You may have stomach pain, indigestion. There was the hospital I went to work at after I finished my residency. There was a doctor there who was the medical director for that emergency department. And for about a month, he was walking around with a bottle of like Maalox or one of those liquid antacids, saying, "Oh, I'm having all this indigestion." And then he suddenly dropped dead from a heart attack. So he misdiagnosed his symptoms. You may have cold sweats, break out in all this perspiration on your face, forehead, and neck. Shortness of breath is very common, or just feel like you can't catch your breath, breathlessness. Nausea is also common, and you may even have vomiting with it. Lightheadedness is another symptom that is associated with heart attacks. God is love, though. God is love. And He wants us to be healthy. He doesn't want us to be sick. He created our bodies to heal and repair themselves when we place them in the right condition. The ultimate expression of love is to give somebody free choice. Give you free choice. God made us as free moral agents with freedom of choice. Think about that. That's the ultimate sign of love right there, that He allowed us to choose. And He even allows us to this day to still choose against what He knows is best for us. Heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States. Elevated cholesterol is the primary contributor to heart disease, especially LDL cholesterol, which is your bad cholesterol. Think of L as lethal. That's the bad one. A plant-based diet, which is free from saturated animal fats and cholesterol, is successful in not only preventing heart disease, but actually treating it. In 1990, Dr. Dean Ornish, cardiologist and a lifestyle educator, showed for the first time that you could reverse heart disease. The typical treatment for heart disease is not trying to reverse it, but just trying to stop it from progressing. Okay? But Dr. Ornish showed that it actually is possible to reverse heart disease with lifestyle. Animal products are the only significant source of cholesterol in our diets because cholesterol is made in the liver. So animals have a liver, so they produce cholesterol. So let's talk a little bit about cholesterol. What exactly is cholesterol? It is fat-like substances dissolved in the blood. What is it made up of? It's made up of the elements of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. If you were to burn it or consume it, what does it produce? It produces carbon dioxide and H2O, which is water. Let's talk a little bit about the types of cholesterol. HDL is high-density lipoprotein. Think of H as healthy. This is your good cholesterol. This is the number you want to go up. This protein binds cholesterol and does not give it up very readily. It keeps it attached to itself, so it's not able to contribute to atherosclerosis or hardening of the arteries. LDL is low-density lipoprotein. Think of L as lethal. This protein binds cholesterol and gives it up very readily, thereby determining the rate of deposition of cholesterol inside the blood vessel. It contributes to atherosclerosis. There's a third type of cholesterol called VLDL, very low-density lipoprotein. This one falls somewhere in the middle. We don't talk about it as much. It's dangerous, but not as dangerous as the LDL. I don't like to stand up front and give you a lot of numbers because once I start saying numbers, everybody just sort of focuses in on the number and that's it. But we can't talk about cholesterol without talking about numbers. So let me show you here. Basically, what I want you to know is the stuff that is in green, okay? Ideal means it's good, all right? So if you hear me say ideal, that's good. If you hear me say something is not ideal, that's bad. Yes, Tina knows about this. So for your total cholesterol, we want it to be 150 or below. Now, I know that number is different than what you might have heard or seen or heard a doctor or somebody tell you, okay? And I'll explain to you why I like that number, but some doctors will tell you if you're under 200, you're okay. Some doctors will tell you if you're under 180, you're okay. Well, I'll explain to you why I like 150. And then LDL, your bad cholesterol, we want it to be 75 or below. And that number typically is lower than what a lot of other people will tell you. And these are the numbers that I think give you the best chance of not having heart disease or problems like that. There's one other number that's not on the chart, and that is your HDL, or your good cholesterol. And for men, we want it to be above 45. And for women, we want it to be above 55. Okay? So those are the numbers that we want you to know. So far I'm only asking you to know 3 numbers. You think you can remember 3 numbers with me? 150, which is your total cholesterol. 75, which is your LDL cholesterol. And either 45 or 55, depending on whether you're male or female. Atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, is made up mostly of cholesterol and fat. It attaches to damage on the inside of a blood vessel by free radicals. Okay? Free radicals can come in and damage the blood vessel. Does anybody remember us talking about free radicals in any of the talks we've done this weekend? Yes. When did you remember me talking about free radicals? Cancer. How does free radicals have an impact on cancer? Yes. It damages the nuclear membrane and can go in and damage the DNA. Very good. You guys are passing the quiz for tonight. That's beautiful. So, free radicals also can damage the inside lining of the blood vessel. And when that happens, the blood vessels are usually smooth on the inside because blood likes to flow in a smooth linear pattern. But if you damage the inside of the blood vessels, they become rough. They get a scar on them. And so what happens is as the blood cells go by that damage at a very high rate of speed, some of the blood cells get damaged. And that is not efficient for circulation. So what happens is the cholesterol acts like a plaster repairman. Cholesterol comes and puts a layer of smooth, slippery stuff on the inside of the blood vessel in order to keep it smooth so the blood cells can slip on by. Now, all of you I know have fallen and skinned a knee or something like that. And what happens is you get a scab. And that scab allows healing to take place underneath it. And then when it's healed, it comes off. Okay? It's the same idea with cholesterol. Cholesterol allows for the inside of the blood vessel to heal underneath that cholesterol layer. And then what's supposed to happen is when the damage is healed, that cholesterol is supposed to come back off and then can be used somewhere else in the body. But if our cholesterol numbers are out of control, it just stays there. It does not come off and allow it to be used somewhere else. Cholesterol exposed to the air becomes oxidized, and oxidized cholesterol can damage blood vessels. Now, how would you get cholesterol exposed to the air? Anything that has cholesterol in it and you process it in any way, you start to expose it to the air and it becomes oxidized. So, for example, if you have a box of cake mix or pancake mix and it has animal products in it like milk powder or powdered eggs or any of that stuff, all you have to do is add a little milk or water to it and you can make whatever. If it has animal products in a powdered form, it has been processed and it contains oxidized cholesterol. Okay? And that in and of itself can damage the arteries. So some sources of oxidized cholesterol include pancake mixes, custard mixes. How about this one? Let me see if you all know what I'm talking about because we're on the East Coast. And I was told you got to come east, right? Okay, all right. Let's see if the East Coast is like the West Coast. Imagine you're trying to be healthy. And so you decide that you're going to go to your favorite Italian restaurant, all right? And you are going to eat soup and salad because you're trying to be healthy, all right? Now, of course, that comes with breadsticks, right? All right. And so they bring it out to you and the waiter says, "You want some?" You say, "Oh, yeah." He says, "Okay, tell me when." "Don't stop yet." No, keep going, don't stop." Okay, that's probably enough. All right. What am I talking about?
Cheese.
Cheese. What kind of cheese? Parmesan cheese. And where am I? You know what? The East is not that far away from the West. Who knew? All right, yeah, so Olive Garden. Parmesan cheese is a great source of oxidized cholesterol. You want to make your arteries a little hard? Have a little Parmesan cheese. It's good for you. Lard, ice cream, all this stuff has oxidized cholesterol. Plaques inside vessels can grow and enlarge, decreasing blood flow in the artery. So if you have a vessel that is this big and you start laying down plaque on the inside, and the inside, the lumen of that vessel becomes this big, there's a significant change in the amount of blood that can flow through that blood vessel. Okay? If your total cholesterol is less than 150, the research shows the damage inside the blood vessel heals quickly, the scars shrink, the cholesterol gets reabsorbed. If your total cholesterol is greater than 180, the LDL cholesterol attaches itself to the walls of the vessels, causing plaques that thicken, stiffen, and narrow the vessels. There's not a big difference between 150 and 180, except for how the cholesterol behaves in your body. So when they tell you if you're 180, you're okay, you're not that okay. If coronary arteries become clogged by plaques, anything that reduces the already diminished oxygen supply can cause your heart to cry out in pain. We call that angina or angina, okay? So when you are working out your chest muscles, they are your pectoral muscles. So if you get angina of the chest, we call it angina pectoris, pain of the chest, okay? Chest pain. So what could cause you to have angina, chest pain? Well, a slight exertion. You start walking up and down some stairs, you know? That may be enough to cause some people to have chest pain. An emotional episode. I can't tell you how many patients I have taken care of who have either had a heart attack or had chest pain just from emotional episodes. Yeah. Even a single big or fatty meal. You eat a high-fat meal, and guess what? That can cause you to have chest pain as well. In one study, researchers found they could make coronary artery disease patients with heart disease, have an angina attack by just adding to their diet. Well, what did they add to their diet? The patients were at rest, so they were not exerting themselves, yet every one of them developed an angina attack, developed chest pain after drinking a glass of dairy cream. Let me put it to you a little different way. Is there anybody out there who likes vanilla ice cream? Okay, several of you do. That's good. Thank you for being honest. All right, so vanilla ice cream. Imagine if you took some vanilla ice cream, put it in a glass, and put it in the microwave for a minute, 45 seconds, a minute. Took it from a solid to a liquid, and then you drank that. That might be enough to cause some people to have chest pain who have underlying heart disease. So if you don't have heart disease and you're eating your vanilla ice cream, what's it doing to you? It's getting you ready to be able to have your chest pain, right? Has anybody ever heard of the Framingham study? Framingham study? Some of you have, all right, praise the Lord. This is a study that was done in a small town in Massachusetts, not far from here, right? Framingham, Massachusetts. Their objective was to identify the common factors or characteristics that contribute to cardiovascular disease. What causes us to get chest pain? Causes us to get heart disease? It began in 1948, still going on. They recruited 5,209 men and women between the ages of 30 and 62. And basically, what they did was they just followed them. They had them come every 2 years. They would do a history on them to see what was going on, what had changed. And they did a physical exam and they drew lab work. And they basically just followed them and followed them and followed them until they could not follow them any longer. In 1971, it got a little more powerful because they recruited the second generation of these people. They recruited the children of the original participants. So now we're starting to see how things go in families. In 2002, they recruited the third generation, the grandchildren of the original participants. So now we have 3 generations that we can look at. Large sample size, lots of patients, and they got a lot of good information. So here is, if you would, the Roman arch for the Framingham study, okay? The things that are in green are considered uncontrollable, like your age and your genetic makeup. Gender is also listed there. I know, I don't know about out east, but in the West, they try to say that gender is debatable, but we don't want to go there. That's another talk, not for today. So we'll assume gender is uncontrollable, okay? Like the Bible says. Then you have the lifestyle things, like stress. Is there anybody in the room tonight who would raise their hand and say they have no stress in their lives? Wow. My brother, you're an anomaly. Praise the Lord. That's a good thing, all right? No stress. That's good. So we're talking about everybody else except for him. Right? We all have stress. Sloth is physical inactivity. If you're not doing anything, you're not exercising, you're not active. Smoking is another lifestyle issue. Then you have the dietary things like obesity. Obesity means you are 20% above your ideal body weight, or typically 30 or more pounds overweight. Diabetes, triglycerides, high blood pressure. But look at what is the most important thing for coronary artery disease: cholesterol, more specifically LDL cholesterol. So the major risk factors for heart disease are high cholesterol, high blood pressure, smoking, obesity, diabetes, and physical inactivity. People in Framingham with cholesterol levels below 150 milligrams per deciliter had no heart attacks. That's pretty good. This is one of the reasons I like cholesterol below 150, because in this case, nobody had a heart attack. Now, it doesn't mean you can't have a heart attack if your cholesterol is less than 150, but this gives us a target to shoot for if we want to minimize our risk. Dr. Paul Dudley White said heart disease before age 80 is our fault, not God's fault. I think there's a certain amount of truth to that. So how can we decrease our risk of having a heart attack? Well, a large study showed that most patients who suffered a heart attack fell within the accepted guidelines for LDL cholesterol. People are having heart attacks at the numbers the doctors say you're okay. Well, that's not ideal. Where's Tina? That's bad, exactly. That is not good if they tell you you're okay and you're not. This suggests that the current guidelines may not be low enough. We need to move our focus from just decreasing risk to eliminating the risk or stopping the atherosclerosis process in its tracks. This is what the editor-in-chief from the American Journal of Cardiology had to say. He's a heart doctor, he's a cardiologist. He says, for the buildup of plaque in our arteries to cease, it appears that the total serum cholesterol needs to be lowered to the 150 area. What number did I tell you should try to get to? Wow, amazing, all right? In other words, the total serum cholesterol must be lowered to that of the average pure vegetarian. And he says average pure vegetarian. What he's saying is somebody who's on a whole food plant-based diet, okay? But listen to this. This is what he says. This is the crux. Because relatively few persons are willing to abide by the vegetarian lifestyle, lipid-lowering drugs are required in most to reach the 150 level. So it's your choice. God gave us free choice, and He's still giving us choice today. You could either shape up or take the meds. Yeah, exactly, and they'll ship you out. So it's your choice. Diet or drugs. Why should we not choose the drugs? Initially, the drugs seem like it's great. I can do whatever I want. I can eat what I like. I do all this stuff, and my numbers look stellar. They look beautiful. Why should we not choose the drugs? Well, there's an increased risk of brain-related side effects with these statin medications. Memory loss. That doesn't sound that good to me. And confusion. They also increase blood sugar levels, potentially contributing to new onset diabetes. Plus, I am not convinced that there is good data to suggest that if your numbers are that good, that you still don't have risk for a heart attack. I see patients on statins who have heart attacks. So I'm not convinced it solves the problem, okay? Cholesterol, though, is only part of the heart disease story. There's more to it than just that. The other part of the story is inflammation. Research has shown that a single meal high in animal fat can paralyze your arteries. Arteries are the blood vessels that lead away from the heart. And they have a little bit of muscle in the wall of the blood vessel. And that muscle can contract or relax depending on what's going on in your body, okay? When it contracts, it keeps your blood pressure up. When it relaxes, your blood pressure comes down. Those muscles have to be able to do that. And your body sends signals to those muscles in those blood vessels to tell it what to do based on what's going on in your body at that moment. If they can't relax, if they are paralyzed, it cuts their ability to relax in half within just hours of eating animal products. So you eat a high-fat animal product meal, and within a few hours, those muscles are paralyzed. And this is America, you know? We go from one high-fat animal meal to another to another. So you eat breakfast. You have bacon and eggs and sausage and potatoes and all this stuff, and you put a little butter on the bread. Ooh. And then, within a few hours, you have lunch. And man, everybody's going to the burger joint, so we're going to have a double cheeseburger with French fries and a milkshake, and then we got to have some ice cream for dessert. This is America. We do it well when we do it, right? Yeah. And then you get home from work, you've had a busy, long day, you're tired and you're hungry, and you know what? I got those 2 steaks from that place in the Midwest that ships them to you. And you throw them on the barbecue, and you have them with some baked potatoes that have butter and sour cream and bacon and all this good stuff. This is America. We like to live so we can die. And when you go from one meal to another like that, those arteries never relax. The lining of your entire vascular tree gets inflamed and stiffened. Animal products with their high fat and cholesterol also causes inflammation in our lungs. Are we seeing more people who have lung issues today than ever before? Yeah. Within hours of eating, inflammatory mediators start to cause inflammation within our airways. Again, remember we said in the arteries it was within hours. In the lungs, it's within hours too. You don't have to go days and weeks to get it to happen. It doesn't happen years down the road, but that very day within hours of eating the animal products. Why does this happen? It's not the animal fat itself. It's not the animal protein, which tends to trigger the inflammation that we see in patients who have arthritis. I talked to some of you. Some of you told me you have arthritis. I told you it's best not to be taking in any animal protein because it only makes it worse. What causes this to happen? Endotoxemia. Toxins that are found in the animal products, in the meat itself. The bloodstream becomes awash with bacterial toxins known as endotoxins that are present in these animal products. These dead meat bacterial toxins are not destroyed by stomach acid. They're not destroyed by our digestive enzymes. They're not destroyed by cooking it, like cooking it well done. No, that doesn't do it. The animal fat that's present in these foods helps to get those bacterial toxins present in the meat through the gut wall and into your system, into your bloodstream. To some people, this might actually look pretty good. While the most obvious solution to this metabolic endotoxemia appears to be to reduce saturated fat intake, but they say the Western diet is not conducive to this mode of action, it's difficult for patients to comply with this request. So these doctors are basically saying people aren't going to do it, so we're not even going to tell them. We're going to find another way to care for them by figuring out a new medicine to help them. What you see pictured on the screen there is chicken and cheese. And that combination, they say, of all the food groups causes the highest levels of endotoxemia in this country. Chicken and cheese. And people feel like they're doing good when they're eating chicken, right? Yeah, it's chicken, it's not red meat. Cholesterol is innocent until proven guilty. Here are some of the functions of cholesterol. It is a fat, so it helps us to digest fat in our food. It also helps us to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins, what we call the ADEK vitamins, vitamins A, D, E, and K. Those are our fat-soluble vitamins. It also plays a role in the production of hormones, things like estrogen and testosterone. It also plays a role in the fight or flight response. When you corner an animal or a human being, there's one of two responses. You either fight your way out or you try to run away. And both of those are mediated through chemicals we call epinephrine, norepinephrine, things like that. They say cholesterol performs over 200 functions in the body. So do you think cholesterol is something we need in our lives? Yeah, absolutely. Okay? We just don't need too much of it. So where does cholesterol come from? How do we get it? Cholesterol is found only in animal products because it is produced in the liver. So you have to have a liver to make cholesterol. Plant foods do not contain cholesterol. Okay? The liver takes fat in the diet and makes cholesterol out of it. The liver also takes cholesterol and makes bile salts, which are used to digest food. The liver makes all the cholesterol that you need. In light of that information, what then can we say about the first bullet point on this slide? We don't need any of that. We don't need animal products because our liver will take a little healthy fat and make what we need. So we don't need to be taking cholesterol in. So that means we don't need to be taking in animal foods. Evidence suggests that a plant-based diet may not only protect against, but may even reverse heart disease. Reversing heart disease is critical considering heart disease often starts in childhood or early adulthood. Heart disease was found to be almost non-existent in populations eating a diet centered around whole plant foods eaten whole. I can show you evidence of, they go to these countries and find people who eat a simple plant-based diet. They don't have heart disease. They don't die of heart attacks. They don't have the things that we do. The arteries of those eating a plant-based diet have less atherosclerotic plaque than runners and than those on a low-carb diet. Low-carb, high-protein, high-fat diet. It is important to make sure that your vitamin B12 is therapeutic because that's going to have a protective effect for you, okay? And how do you make sure it's therapeutic? Yeah, you get tested. You don't have to take a vitamin B12 unless you know what your number is. So I recommend you get tested. I recommend you get tested for two things as somebody on a whole food plant-based diet. And that is, you want to get tested for a vitamin B12 level and a vitamin D level. You need to get those, and you need to get those twice a year, once in the winter and once in the summer. And then you know where you stand. Don't guess. Find out. Plant foods are the only source of heart-healthy fiber. Fiber helps to protect our hearts. Fiber helps to bind cholesterol in the gut, tie it up, and then move it out of the body. It goes out in the waste. This is rather interesting. I want to share this with you so you understand this. Some doctors may be unaware of the power of nutrition to stop our number one killer. People say, why has my doctor never told me this before? Exactly, they don't know. This sick population concept is one that leads nutrition studies to underestimate the role of diet in disease. What do we mean by sick population concept? Well, there's not a lot of nutritional education in medical school. And many doctors just don't know about it. I didn't learn about it until I got out of medical school and started studying this on my own. You know, I went to Loma Linda University, a Seventh-day Adventist medical school, and in 4 years of medical school, I had one lecture on nutrition, and it was a 2-hour lecture. And they basically talked to us about carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. That was it. But here is the concept, okay? If everyone in the population is sick and ill health is everywhere, then there may not be enough of a range of health to establish an association. So what we're trying to say is, if everyone smoked and got lung cancer, okay, then we may not associate lung cancer with smoking, but we may think it's a genetic problem because everybody's getting it. Their father had it, they get it, their son gets it. Unfortunately, the most common treatment is the prescription of cholesterol-lowering drugs, which have multiple side effects. We don't make the connection because so many people have the disease that we just think it's everywhere and we just have to treat you. We can't fix the problem. So the world's treatment is atorvastatin, Lipitor. This is the most commonly prescribed statin medication in the world. Possibly the most commonly prescribed medication in the world. Possibly the most commonly prescribed medication in the United States. But Lipitor is not without its issues. Lipitor causes muscle breakdown, which can lead to kidney problems, including kidney failure. The proteins in the muscles come out of the muscles, get into the bloodstream, go through the blood, get to the kidney, and the kidney filters them out, and then it plugs up the filtering units in the kidney. When that happens, the kidney's not working normally, and we start to get kidney failure. Lipitor also has been associated with raising your blood sugars, causing type 2 diabetes, new onset type 2 diabetes. Lipitor has also been associated with memory loss. We talked about that. That's not something we're looking for. That's not something we want, right? Cholesterol-lowering medications like Lipitor, statins, are associated with an increased risk of breast cancer. How many people want that? Cholesterol is needed to make estrogen, and many breast cancers are estrogen sensitive. Women aged 55 to 74 on long-term statins, greater than 10 years of statin usage, show double the risk of breast cancer. A plant-based diet, in contrast, is rich in phytosterols, which are basically plant fats. And that offers protection against breast cancer. Helps to make normal cells thrive, and it prevents cancer cells from growing. All right, let's talk about this. We haven't really touched it very much yet, so. Eggs. Eating just 1 egg a day may exceed the safe limit of cholesterol, and it has been linked to a shortened lifespan. 1 egg a day. Okay? Eggs are so high in cholesterol that the egg industry cannot even legally claim that eggs are nutritious. They work around this with all kinds of fancy language, but they can't really say that eggs are nutritious. Dr. David Spence, stroke expert in Canada, says the only Canadians who should eat eggs on a regular basis are those who have a terminal illness, because they're dying anyhow. Yeah. The dietitian from the Egg Farmers of Canada disagreed. Well, yeah, of course. That's their job. His reply, who would you want to believe? The dietitian who works for the Egg Farmers of Canada or a doctor who has spent 30 years trying to prevent strokes? You don't always get the truth when you hear advertising. The Harvard Nurses Study, this is a study that was done at Harvard University looking at nurses, and it shows us how much an effect an egg has on heart disease. Consuming the amount of cholesterol found in just a single egg per day appears to cut a woman's life short as much as smoking 5 cigarettes per day for 15 years. That's an impact right there. So let's talk about the cholesterol checklist so you can know what foods contain cholesterol and what do not. Cholesterol is made in the liver, all right? Anything that has a liver has cholesterol. Anything that comes from something that has a liver contains cholesterol. If it has a face or has a mother, it contains cholesterol. Okay? Simple enough. You can remember that. Cholesterol is manufactured in the liver. Anything that has a liver contains cholesterol. Anything that comes from something that has a liver contains cholesterol. If it has a face or has a mother, it contains cholesterol. Just because we are vegetarian or vegan does not mean that we can't have a high cholesterol. Okay? They can still have it. People who eat too many foods that are high in fat can still have high cholesterol. That can even include plant-based foods. Okay? Anybody out there like pistachios? Or am I the only one? All right. I see some hands going up. I love it. So if you go to Sam's Club or Costco or BJ's, you can get pistachios one of two ways. You can get them in the shell or out of the shell. Okay? If they're in the shell, it takes a little bit more work to open them up. It slows us down a little bit, right? All right. If they're out of the shell, dig in and grab a handful, right? Think about this. Nuts are a high-fat food. They're healthy fat as long as you're not on a high-fat diet. God packages foods in certain ways to let us know how to eat them. Amen. Right? If they are hard to get into, that's probably a reason to have more moderation, more temperance, not overdo it. Right? Makes sense. All right, changing gears, let's talk a little bit about hypertension. What is hypertension? It's an increase in tension on blood vessels. Pressure put on the blood by the forces of the heartbeat. So you all are sitting here, and some of you are kind of drowsy, that's okay, but as you're sitting here, if you were to check your pulse, and by the way, I never really ask you to check your pulse, okay? Because I don't tell you to exercise to a certain heart rate or anything like that. But just if you were to check your pulse, and then if you went outside and walked around the parking lot twice and came back in and sat down and checked your pulse, you would notice that the pulse would hit your fingers with more force after you'd walked around the parking lot. That means the force of our heartbeat can change. And so, depending on how much force our heart is pumping with, that's going to have an impact on our blood pressure. Also, the flow characteristics of our blood. For example, if you try to suck water through a straw and you try to suck honey through a straw, the thicker liquid is harder to move. It requires more force, right? So if your blood is dehydrated and thicker and more like honey, guess what? It's going to take a little bit more force to pump that blood. And so, we don't want to have thick blood. We want to thin our blood and make sure we're drinking enough water. Also, the weight of substances carried in the blood. Everything in our blood, we now can tell you what it weighs because we are able to do a microscopic weight, okay? So we can tell you what the molecular weight is of a glucose molecule. We can tell you what the molecular weight is of an insulin molecule. We can tell you what the molecular weight is for the average red blood cell. So everything that's in your blood, we can give you a weight for it. And if you have more sugar, or you have more hormones, or you have more insulin, or whatever it is in your blood, then actually that can make your blood a little bit heavier on a microscopic scale, and that makes it a little harder to push. And then external pressure. External pressure is exerted by tissue pressure, muscle tone, and clothing. So if you're retaining water and you have increased pressure in the tissues, that's going to put a little bit of pressure on the blood vessels that run through the tissues and beside the tissues. So if you have a little bit of swelling, it's going to be a little harder to pump your blood. Muscle tone. If you walk around all the time and you can't put your arms down by your side because you've made your muscles so big, in order to get that big, you have to lift heavy weight. And when you lift heavy weight, it makes you raise your blood pressure, because when you're lifting heavy weight and you kind of close the back of your throat and you grunt and you groan, we call that in medicine a Valsalva maneuver. And what that actually does is it creates increased intrathoracic pressure that makes your blood pressure go up a little bit. And then when the muscles get big, they put a little bit of pressure on the blood vessels that run through and beside them, and that makes it a little harder to pump, and so your blood pressure goes up. The really, really big guys who work out a lot and you think they look so fit, they're really only good at whatever the activity is they're doing, the type of weight movement they're doing. But if you ask them to go and do something that requires agility or stretching or things like that, they're not necessarily good at that. It's exercise specific. And so those people often don't live very long. The people who live to be 100 years old usually are thin, usually are active every day. They're not doing anything to extremes. And, you know, it's not weightlifting that makes you look better. And the world says if you're going to go to the gym, if you're going to go and exercise, you got to look good. You got to show off what you got. So the world's idea of exercise clothing is tight, restrictive clothing. And it restricts blood flow. And circulation is one of the things that we have said is crucial for health. You got to not only make good blood, but get it to every single cell in your body. And so, when you wear this tight, restrictive clothing, you don't get good blood flow, especially in your pelvis, okay? And I'm not being sexist in saying this affects both sexes, but women tend to wear more tight clothing than men. And so they don't get good blood flow in their pelvis. They get decreased blood flow to their reproductive organs, and they start to get infertility. They get things like ovarian cysts or polycystic ovarian syndrome. They may get things like dysfunctional uterine bleeding. They may get fibroids. They may get all of these different things that often are related to blood flow. Men have the same issues. When you don't get good blood flow to your pelvis, your sexual organs don't get good blood flow. There's a reason that God created men with their testicles on the outside of the body. They are the same equivalent as the ovaries in a female, but they're on the outside. They produce sperm better when they are a little cooler than body temperature. And if we wear tight, restrictive clothing, holding them always close to the body, the temperature goes up just a little bit. The sperm count goes down just a little bit. We're seeing more people with infertility. So I told this to people at one of our programs that we had out in California, and a lady who was at that program the very next day went to the store and bought some different clothing. She was convicted. So I just want to tell you, if you're convicted about something I've said this weekend, act on it right away. Don't put it off, okay? Because the conviction may wane. The systolic blood pressure, the higher of the two numbers, is the pressure of the heart while it is pumping blood, okay? When the heart is pumping, that's the top number. The diastolic blood pressure, the lower of the two numbers, is made by the muscles of the blood vessels themselves. So those muscles that lead away from the heart, those arteries, those muscles inside there, put a little pressure on there to keep the blood flowing when the heart is not pumping. Because your heart pumps and then it has to refill. And while it is refilling, the blood has to keep flowing. So God created this system where there are muscles to just put a little pressure to keep the blood flowing until the heart pumps again. The heart valves are closed at that point. The blood is getting into the heart, and so we call that the resting pressure. That's why you don't want to have your diastolic blood pressure be too high, because it's the time when your heart is resting and actually when your heart is getting its blood flow. So you don't want your bottom number to be too high. Our cardiovascular system is a closed system. The pressure never completely drops to zero. That's a good thing, because blood has to flow against gravity to get to our brains. And our brains need three things to work. They need blood flow, they need glucose, and they need oxygen. And circulation comprises all of those. And blood has to flow against gravity to get to our brains. If blood stopped flowing between heartbeats, we would start to pass out, and then we'd wake up with the next heartbeat and pass out, and that wouldn't be efficient. So God created this system to keep blood flowing. Again, I don't like to give you numbers, but we got to talk about a number if we're going to talk about blood pressure. So the number I want you to know is this one right here. The optimal, the ideal, the normal blood pressure is considered 120/80 and below. That's all you really need to know. That's the goal for everybody here, is to get you to 120/80 or below. Elevated or borderline high blood pressure is 120/1 to 129/80 or below. Stage 1 hypertension, 130 to 139/80 to 89. Stage 2 hypertension, 140/90 or above. Hypertensive crisis, systolic blood pressure above 180 or diastolic above 120. These are the 2021 guidelines, okay? So 120/80 or below. This is really interesting. When I saw this, I was really pleased. I actually got a little excited about this, okay? In 2021, when they made the new guidelines, they said low-risk adults, they have no atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. Their 10-year cardiovascular disease risk is less than 10%. So people who don't have obvious heart disease, okay? And they have stage 1 hypertension, blood pressure 130 to 139/80 to 89. They said the first step of treatment is lifestyle modification. Wow, that's exciting. They're not forcing everybody to start off on a medicine, okay? Non-pharmacological management, and they will give you 3 to 6 months to get it worked out. Then, if you're not making changes, you're not doing anything, things aren't getting better, then they start to consider pharmacological therapy. But the fact that they're willing to give people 3 to 6 months is a blessing. Yeah, it's amazing. Here are the statistics. 1/3 of the people in the United States have high blood pressure. So what are we talking about? 110, 111 million people? Makes you 3 times more likely to have a heart attack, 5 times more likely to develop heart failure, and 8 times more likely to have a stroke. The Global Burden of Disease Study is the most comprehensive, systematic analysis of the causes of death ever undertaken around the world. It is a collaboration of over 3,000 researchers from 150 countries. And here's what they found. The number 1 risk factor for death in the world, according to the Global Burden of Disease Study, is high blood pressure. And 1/3 of our people in our country have it, right? They say it kills about 9 million people worldwide every year, causing deaths from a variety of causes, including aneurysms, heart attacks, heart failure, kidney failure, stroke, and the list could go on.
That's because a lot of people don't even know it. They don't get that.
Right. They don't realize it because high blood pressure is a silent killer. You don't realize you have it until one day you realize you have it. In other words, you could have it for a period of time without really any significant symptoms, and then suddenly it's like one day you cross over an imaginary line and all of a sudden you feel bad. Then you go and get checked and, oh wow, your blood pressure's high. Under God's ideal plan, our blood pressure should not continue to rise as we age. Barring any other disease, blood pressure should remain the same throughout life. How can I say that? Do you mind if I tell you a story?
No, please do.
All right, thank you. I heard that way out there. You remember Moses? Moses was listed in the Bible. Moses was born in Egypt. He was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, and they were training him to be the next Pharaoh. And how long did they train him? 40 years. Then God called him to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. And how long does the Bible say that he led the children of Israel? 40 years. There was one step I left out. Before God used him, he sent him to university. Sent him to his school. How long did he train him? 40 years. And what was he doing for his training? He was a shepherd. And where was he a shepherd? In the desert. It's hard enough to herd sheep in a meadow where there's grass and water and everything else. But he was out in the desert. So he was in Egypt for 40 years. He went to God's school for 40 years. He led the children for 40 years. How old is Moses at this point in his life? 120 years old. Okay? And the Bible says his strength was not abated. His vision was not dim. He was as strong, as sharp. He could see as well as when he was a young man in Egypt. And God told him, listen, I'm not going to let you into the promised land. But I want you to go up on this mountain and I will show it to you. So Moses walked up the mountain and God showed him the promised land. And we believe he even showed him on down through time. And then the Bible records that Moses died. And I don't think it was a scary thing for him. He was there with his best friend God. And I think it was just like going to sleep. He just fell asleep. That was it. And God buried him. But here's the point I want you to understand. Moses was 120 years old, and he was as strong as when he was a young man in Egypt. Moses had to walk up the mountain to his own funeral. I think that's what God expects from us. He wants us to do the things He asks us to do. He wants us to care for our bodies. He wants us to follow His plan. He wants us to have the strength and ability when we are old, like when we were young. He doesn't expect for us to get old and decrepit and not be able to do anything. And so, in order to be able to do that, you've got to follow God's plan. And then He expects us to do what He asks us, and then He'll say, okay, you've done what I've asked. Your time is up. It's time for you to go and rest. And then it's not scary. You're healthy. You're good. So why then do so many of us see an increase in blood pressure along with our increase in years? Studies have shown that if either parent has hypertension, their children have twice the risk of developing it themselves. And if you got two parents with it, it just goes up that much higher. Stress has become unavoidable in life today, except for my friend over here, Malcolm. Yeah, he's stress-free, but the rest of us, we're struggling with it a little bit, all right? And COVID hasn't helped it any. COVID has made stress worse for most of us. This is an important contributor to hypertension. Stress affects hypertension. Other factors include diet, weight gain, and physical inactivity. We have become one nation under pressure. Researchers measured the blood pressure of 1,000 people in rural Kenya. They ate whole plant foods, whole grains, beans, vegetables, fruit, and dark green leafy vegetables. Our blood pressures in America go up as we age. These people, their blood pressures actually went down. They found the same thing in rural China. 70-year-olds with the same blood pressure as 16-year-olds. On average, 110/70. China, though, is a lot different than Africa. So what's the similarity? A plant-based diet with meat only on special occasions. Again, we go back to this global burden of disease study, the most comprehensive and systematic observational epidemiological study on the causes of death, involving over 3,600 researchers, more than 300 institutions, and over 150 countries. What did they find? Here in the United States, they determined that our biggest killer was our diet, and the most important dietary risk was not eating enough fruit. For most of us, that's easy to do. Most of us like fruit more than vegetables. You need to eat both, but most of us can increase our fruit intake significantly. The Union of Concerned Scientists proposes science for a healthy planet and a safer world. It turns out that an apple a day really can keep the doctor away. In a 2013 report they called the $11 trillion reward, increasing our consumption of fruits and vegetables could save more than 100,000 lives and $17 billion in healthcare costs from heart disease each year. Just by eating a little bit more fruit and vegetables. High blood pressure and atherosclerosis. These silent killers can lead to many health problems, even death. High blood pressure can cause damage to the arterial walls. A healing patch is made out of cholesterol and other elements. Clots on the vessel walls can then obstruct the circulation. If these clots become dislodged and released into the bloodstream, they may end up occluding or clotting a blood vessel in the brain, the heart, or the lungs, causing a stroke, a heart attack, or a pulmonary embolus. Foods that are saturated in fat or have trans fats contribute to this. Cheese is the #1 source of saturated fat in our diets today. We also find it in red meat and processed meats. Other meats like lamb chops, beef, pork, bacon, poultry, these things all contribute to this as well. Milk, butter, and other dairy products also has an effect. Eggs and mayonnaise can also contribute. You can get some medium chain fatty acids in things like coconut oil and palm oils. So you have to be careful about things like that. Also, shortening and lard can contribute to saturated and trans fats. Some suggestions to get your heart healing. Find a friend. You know, if you have a friend, your heart is a little easier, right? It feels a little better. Find a friend to join you in eating plant-based foods. That's a good start. Be patient. This transition doesn't happen instantaneously and overnight. Learn a new recipe a week. We gave you several weeks' worth of recipes yesterday. Gradually replace animal foods with plant-based foods you enjoy. You're not going to like everything that's plant-based. Find ones you like and eat those. Eat foods more in their natural state. Minimize your processed food products. Meat substitutions are only for cravings. Don't make them a habit. Those meat substitutes are there for the transition from going from a meat diet to a plant-based diet. The problem is we're stuck in transition. We like that stuff. Natural flavor enhancers can help. Seeds, nuts, sun-dried tomatoes, herbs, lemon, garlic. We showed you some of those things yesterday. Nitric oxide. This is an important element for heart and vascular health. Nitric oxide improves circulation, leading to better oxygenation of your tissues. This compound, nitric oxide, is produced by the inner lining of the arteries, those blood vessels that lead away from the heart. It has two main functions. It keeps the arterial lining smooth and slippery, preventing damage and clot formation. Secondly, it relaxes those muscles in the arteries, leading to better circulation of blood. So how can we increase nitric oxide? Well, eat vegetables high in nitrites, such as celery, beetroot, leafy greens, all those things. Other foods that can boost nitric oxide: garlic, citrus fruits, pomegranates, nuts, seeds, including pumpkin seeds. Beans contain the amino acid L-arginine. L-arginine is essential to help your body to make nitric oxide. Beans and rice also contain all of the essential amino acids that our bodies need to make protein. That's why so many countries, quote unquote, have a staple diet that includes beans and rice. Pumpkin seeds that we mentioned there have the highest content of L-arginine in any food. So they're a good food to eat to increase your nitric oxide. Antioxidants. Nitric oxide degrades quickly, so antioxidants help to extend its lifespan. Eat the amino acids L-arginine and L-citrulline. Both of those help to produce nitric oxide in the body. And exercise increases your body's ability to produce nitric oxide. So all of those things are going to be helpful for you. Physical movement improves the function of the inner layer of the arteries, leading to more production of nitric oxide. This in turn improves the health of the artery. Some remarkable studies have been done that show the amazing effects exercise has on the body. A marked improvement in arterial health can be seen in just a few short weeks when one starts to exercise. We have patients who come to NEWSTART, and they're there for 2.5 weeks, 18 days. Some of those patients come and they are not really able to walk. In fact, we give them a walker to use because we're worried they're going to fall and hurt themselves. As they walk every day and try to walk just a little bit farther each day, some of those same patients who start out with a walker, by the end of the 18 days, are walking 2 to 3 miles a day. Yeah, amen. Praise the Lord. If they can do it, you can do it. Yes. The cardiovascular benefits of exercise: it improves circulation, prevents plaque formation, boosts nitric oxide levels, increases antioxidant activity, relieves repressed emotion, distracts you from your problems, improves your sleep, improves your resistance to stress, decreases LDL cholesterol, which is your bad cholesterol, increases HDL cholesterol, which is your good cholesterol. It increases muscle endurance and strength. It relaxes your muscles. It stimulates the release of endorphins. Threes are fatty acids that have an anti-inflammatory effect in the body. In order to improve cardiac health, we must stop the damage by maintaining a normal blood pressure and adopting a healthy lifestyle. Omega-3s lower blood pressure and triglycerides. Fish and fish oil contain this nutrient, but fish contain many toxins, including mercury. Get your omega-3s the same way the fish get it, from plants. Eat plants. So I recommend you grind flax and chia seeds daily, sprinkle them on your food, and use them right away. Don't let them sit. Water is also important. The benefits of water are innumerable. While studying heart disease, Dr. Jacqueline Chan's team at Loma Linda University discovered that drinking more water decreases your mortality rate from a heart attack by about 50%. So again, I recommend to you that you drink 80 to 100 ounces of water per day. You can ignore this, Malcolm, everybody else. High levels of stress increase the risk of heart disease. Stress can have both a direct and indirect effect on our cardiac health. Anger can more than double the risk of a heart attack. So how do we manage stress? Well, adopt a healthy lifestyle. Do not overcommit. My wife would tell me I need to preach to myself here. Learn how to say no. Simplify your life. Learn how to relax. Stay physically active and be good to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Take a mini vacation. Just a day or two may be all it takes to recharge. Learn from your mistakes and then move on. Don't repeat them. Resolve conflicts. Conflict resolution is important. Make an attitude change. Have an attitude of gratitude. Keep balance in your life. Get extra help. Learn to trust God. Hypertension is the silent killer because it has no symptoms until you have the disease. Identify your hypertension risk factors early before there are any outward signs of disease. If these risk factors are recognized, precautions can be taken and lifestyle modifications made. If the disease has already beset us, lifestyle modifications, including diet and habits, can be changed, and by God's grace, the disease reversed. Many physicians believe that there are no effective means of preventing or delaying the onset of hypertension. I would say that is not true. They think if everybody lives long enough, they're going to get it. All right? Research shows that a temperate, total vegetarian lifestyle, this is a whole food, plant-based lifestyle, will prevent or delay the onset and control it in most patients. These physicians may be reluctant to suggest lifestyle changes. They may feel that patients will see them as meddlers, or they believe patients are not willing to change. I have to believe that you're willing to change because if I don't, it'll depress me. So I just have to believe that you're willing to do some things differently to see what lifestyle change can do for you by God's grace. Medications. Medications are not benign. This is Zestril, lisinopril. This is an ACE inhibitor, an angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitor. It's a commonly prescribed blood pressure medicine. This lady on the right is the same lady on the left. If you look at the lady on the left, from about her mid-cheek down, you can see her cheeks are swollen, her lips are swollen, maybe even her nose is swollen. That is something we call angioedema. Angioedema. It is associated with lisinopril and other ACE inhibitors, all of those blood pressure medications that end in pril. Okay? So, here is another patient with angioedema. You can see how that's pretty significant. 3 times, my wife doesn't like to see this picture. 3 times in my emergency medicine career, I had to take control of somebody's airway because I was worried that they were going to swell that much and cut off their airway and not be able to breathe. So we had to put them on a breathing tube and a ventilator to save their lives. Hypertension, there's a conflict because some researchers have shown prolonged life by reducing blood pressure with medications. Other studies, though, show a shorter lifespan for people who use hypertensive medications. Remember that medications are a band-aid that treats the symptoms but does not affect the cause. God designed our bodies to heal and repair themselves when placed in the right condition. The American Heart Association found that even mild cases of hypertension that were treated with medication could develop nerve atrophy and shrinkage of the brain. That doesn't sound too good to me. It's not the gray matter that shrinks, which is on the outside of the brain, but the white matter, the portion of the brain that allows for communication from one part of the brain to another. It leads to decreased dexterity both mentally and physically with long-standing hypertension. Do not ignore an elevated blood pressure just because one refuses to take medications. There are effective natural ways to treat high blood pressure. Patients are better served by changing their entire physical condition with lifestyle. Lifestyle change can be exciting and enjoyable when approached with a spirit of discovery. It is an easy manner to lose the health, but it is difficult to regain it. We cannot afford to dwarf or cripple a single function of the mind or body by overwork or abuse of any part of the living machinery. We should practice temperance in our labor. It is not our duty to place ourselves where we shall be overworked. Some may at times be placed where this is necessary, but it should be the exception, not the rule. We are to practice temperance in all things. For bodily exercise profiteth little, but godliness is profitable unto all things, having the promise of the life that now is and of that which is to come. Wherefore we are also compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us. And let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking on to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith.